Welcome to Big Blend Radio with your hosts, Lisa and Nancy, editors of BigBlendMagazine.com.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Big Blend Radio's Writers and Authors Show with Books Forward. We love working with Books Forward. They represent the best authors. And today we've got a really cool author joining us, Mike Yam. He is a sportscaster and a studio host for the NFL Network and Sirius XM Radio. But he's not joining us to talk about football, which is probably a good thing since all we know about football over here is to play classical music when you put it on the TV and see how football people do things. So anyway, today we're actually talking about his children's book. It's called Fried Rice and Marinara. It is awesome, and we can't wait because what this book does is really celebrates multi-ethnic backgrounds. And for a kid's book, and then focusing on food and birthday parties, you can't go wrong. So welcome, Mike. How are you?
Lisa, it is great to be with you. You have now given me a new idea. I have been watching football my entire life. I don't know if I have ever thrown the classical music on, put the TV on mute, and just watch these players. It is poetry in motion in a lot of ways. So it will be a new viewing experience when I try that next week.
Well, and then do it during the holiday season, put the Nutcracker Suite on, and that really is quite amazing. So I recommend Tchaikovsky for it, but that's as far as we go with understanding football. But I did watch rugby and soccer, so that's kind of the closest I get to understanding football.
You're on it. You're on it for sure. We'll make it work.
So tell us a little bit about your background getting into sportscasting. I mean, so really you're a communicator, no matter how you look at it, whether you're doing radio, TV, obviously a communicator. So this is another branch out. But what did everyone say when you're going from football to, hey, I'm writing a kid's book? And no, it's not about football.
Lisa, there's been a lot of twists and turns during the course of my career. And even the fact that I get to talk about sports for a living was not exactly the initial intent for me. I started, ever since I was a kid, I wanted to be a pediatrician. I got to college. I was the pre-med track. And clearly that didn't last long. I took a hard right turn early in my career, my college career, and decided that, sports, I was always in love with sports. But I candidly, I didn't know. I know this sounds crazy because as a kid, I was watching every game, I was playing every sport, but I actually didn't know that there were broadcasters and it was a job that I could do. Fundamentally, I think I understood that those roles existed, but I never envisioned myself or even knew that something like that was possible. And it wasn't until I got to college and sort of found the radio station there and I fell in love with media communication, as you made reference to, and certainly telling stories. And for the majority of my career, I've just been telling stories about athletes. And, over time, I think as I've gotten a little bit older and talked to family and have seen a lot of my family who, there's some mixed race backgrounds there, including myself, because I'm Chinese and Italian, I started to realize that there was a real massive void in children's literature. And I think just in media in general that had Asian characters taking a lead that talked about mixed race families, and it just didn't exist. And one of my cousins, who is Chinese, her husband is Jewish. They got 3 little ones who are amazing. And one day she had said to me a few years ago, do you know any books that exist for kids that have Asian boys? Because Nate needs some of those stories and I can't find any. And she said, if you have any recommendations, and I didn't. And then it sort of sparked something in my mind. And I said, man, like when I was a kid, there was the book about Superman, which I loved. I probably had my mom read it to me 10,000 times. I still can close my eyes and picture that book. And my dad is a cytotechnician, and as a cytologist, it's the study of cells. So I had a book with Snoopy that talked about cells. Like those were the books that I could remember, but I never had a book that had an Asian character, mixed race families. Like that just wasn't necessarily a thing in the early 80s that I think was generally, I shouldn't say accepted, that's probably overstating it, but there was a time early in my career or early in my life where, Lisa, I legitimately as a kid thought I was the only Chinese Italian person on the planet. And I think part of all of this, and this is probably the longest winded answer to your question, but that's sort of how we netted out to Fried Rice and Marinara.
I think you're right there. I mean, I'm going back to my childhood, but, I grew up in different countries, but there wasn't enough like girls' books. It was like the Hardy Boys. We had Nancy Drew and that's it. And I was like, you know what? Come on, we need some girls in there. And, and then if they did put them in there, they're always falling over tree trunks and, like we're not good. Like I was a good tomboy and I wanted tomboys, but, going into a multi-ethnic backgrounds, of mixed race and cultures and beliefs, that was kind of a no-no if you think about it all the way through. And I think the 60s it started to happen, but it was a hush-hush thing. And mixing religions was a big deal. So we've changed a lot over the last, few decades, but not the literature hasn't caught up with what
No doubt.
human beings are doing. And it depends, still a big no-no in some cultures. Like it's
Yeah.
still, you know what I mean? So I celebrate what you're doing because I think, and I love the fact that you brought food into this and a birthday party. Because, who doesn't love a party? And it's a big deal. I mean, as a kid, like waiting for you now, I don't care. I'm like, shh, I'm holding on to this other 1 year I have for like a
Exactly.
very long time. Please don't, but as kids, it's a huge deal. But the food we travel a lot. And food is one way to get people together, slow down, hopefully
Yeah.
put their phone down and communicate over different ideals and maybe have a positive conversation. So I love that breaking bread of it. But then you're like, hey, we can actually celebrate with two different, dishes that, hey, fried rice and marinara. Now, have you had that? Have you? Because now I'm curious to make this now.
Yeah, yeah. I can honestly tell you it was not a conscious decision. But as a kid, Lisa, like all of the birthday parties, it was both Chinese and Italian food because I really did love
Mm,
both. And from a food standpoint, I never felt like I was getting pulled, but I think from a cultural standpoint, those things happen. But at those birthday parties, my plate was loaded. I mean, it was both foods on the plate. So while I can't technically say I've made fried rice and marinara, I am pretty positive there was some cross pollination on the plate and they were mixed together. So I will net out and say, yes, I did have it, but I
yeah.
didn't actually make it.
I've done, spaghetti and meatballs on top of a salad just out of,
That
and I
works.
had it for breakfast. I'm weird,
Need the
but like,
greens.
it just, hey, I had salad for breakfast this morning. I am weird. I don't know many people that will do that, but to me, I think, hey, no, try it out, and for kids, that's creativity. And I love that little Mikey goes to his grandma's, and then you're putting in, and you've got the video too, that animated video of the book, which is really fun for people to get into. But going to the grandmas and even hearing the different cultural names for grandmas, that was
Wow.
also something interesting that I didn't actually know. So,
Yeah, and that was just sort of how life was. My Chinese grandmother, Babu, that's how I referenced
mhm,
her. I think for Italian culture, we hear Nana and
mhm.
and no, and that's familiar to us. But you're right. Like in the story, Mikey's got to figure out, like, hey, how do I make this decision? Because his mom says, hey, like you got to figure out, like, what kind of food do you want for your fourth birthday party? So he goes to the grandmas who are his food gurus and trying to get some advice. And his Chinese grandmother says, look, in Hong Kong we had Chinese food, and his Italian grandmother says in Italy we had Italian food. So there's
Mhm.
this dilemma at place for Mikey as he's trying to decide which direction to go. And you're right, we do get to a point where we're able to combine the foods, and he realizes, like, hey, like this is pretty cool, and I don't need to just identify with one. I'm really both cultures. And to me, it was the easiest way to link the idea of multicultural backgrounds in one centralized
Mhm.
story. And as you made reference to, I think all of us can appreciate going out to dinner with our friends or our family and having some of those conversations. But I think at four, it's probably a little bit harder, right? So how do I create a backdrop? Well, my God, who doesn't love a birthday party
Mm,
when they're a kid, especially at four? Like that's the excitement. You got the presents and the birthday gifts, and
yeah.
your friends are going to come over. So that's the reason why we went down this path of trying to create the story. And I think, you made reference to the video component. Fried rice and
Oh, I love
marinara,
it.
actually, it started as a video on a platform called Vooks, which fully animates children's stories. They have read along text with you with that narration. And, it's able to help fast track reading. And I wanted to go down this path because when I was a kid, there were some struggles for me learning how to read. And I wish I
Mm,
had a platform like Vooks. And, and for anyone who's listening right now or watching this video, like you can get the book and it's amazing. And I hope you people go and do it, but you can actually watch the video and the story story for free on YouTube. There is a difference, though, Lisa, between the book and the video, not from a story perspective, but at the end of the actual physical book, there's a page at the back, and I wanted the story to continue on for families after they were done reading it. And there's a final page where it gives kids an opportunity to either write or draw their favorite funky food combinations. Because when I was writing the story, I envisioned telling the story to one of my nieces and nephews. And I know I have crazy language and I get fully animated with them. And, I want them to think. And anytime I tell them a story, I ask them questions after because I want to see where their mind goes. So for me, with the actual physical book, I wanted that experience to continue once they were done reading the actual story.
See, there's the journalist in you, it's got to have a question at the end. Well, no, but I love that part. And I love that you also in the book could also call it a mashup, because that's something that kids know now. I don't think we had that term when I was growing up, that's the mashup. So it's really well done. Even the rhyming and just the letters, it moves really fun and well. And it's like, ooh, and it's weird because I know I'm not that age anymore. I'm not 4 years old by a long shot. Well, I can be at times, but you do catch yourself even as adult reading while you're listening, and you go in. It's kind of it's like being in karaoke, like you're watching the bouncing ball.
I really appreciate that, because one of the things as a first time author and the first time I'm actually writing a children's book, I think about how I absorb information and what was memorable for me as a kid. And of course, song, even as an adult. I mean, I'm in the car, no one wants to hear me sing, but I'll be singing those lyrics. And it occurred to me, hey, maybe this is the way to actually write this story. Have it rhyme so it becomes a little bit more memorable. And at times when I was writing some of the words and the rhyme scheme, I was trying to almost sing it, like have a beat in the background. So I really do appreciate you, making that comment and talking about the ups and downs and the cadence of the scheme.
Yeah, no, and the actual illustrations, tell us about who did your illustrations, because they're really well done. I mean, because that's a hard thing to put on someone. It's like, here, you're gonna, now draw someone that is from two different backgrounds, ethnic backgrounds, and you better get it right.
Yeah,
Because someone's gonna get mad somewhere if you don't.
Exactly. My mom was really happy when she saw the illustrations. So all the characters in the story that have a name are actually based off of real people in my family.
Okay, cool.
And when we were putting this project together, the team at Vooks, they're known for their animation and illustrations. So they paired me with Laura Dong, who is actually based in Europe. But I'm not saying this and I sound like I'm really biased, and I don't care if it sounds like I'm biased, but I really do think I had maybe the best illustrator on the planet. She's the credibility. And I must have told her a handful of times, and I think she probably got tired of me saying it, but her illustrations, I think, really lended a ton of credibility to this story. As someone who hadn't done this before, to have someone with her resume and background, she worked for Apple Plus and has worked on shows like Wolfwalkers and has won awards on that side. So fully versed on it. And I think, to your point on trying to find a character and an illustration that of a mixed race person, you're right. Like, you do want to get it right. And the first question she had to me was, can you go and just send me pictures of yourself as a kid and your family members that I can work off of? And that's exactly what she did. I mean, some of the particulars, and even from a non-character standpoint, I sent a picture, and it's one of the first images that you see in the book. And it's Mikey with his mom outside of his house. And there's some details on the house. And I got chills when I first saw the first drafts of those illustrations, because the detail of my childhood home, there was these little workings that she worked into it. So it was amazing.
Wow.
She's spectacular. She's a complete sweetheart, and really did such an amazing job. I'm so proud of the work that she did. And once again, just the credibility giving to this story as someone who hasn't been down this path before. I am ridiculously fortunate that she agreed to do this.
Well, I know, because people think, oh, just do slap out a children's book. It's easy but it's not, because you have to be in their headset, and how do they take in information? Just like what you do as a sportscaster. It's like, how are you going to deliver this information? And so to me, it's a fascinating thing. I write music, so I understand, that kind of balance of what you've done. And I think it moves and it's perfect, and it slows down in places that you wanted to slow down to sink in, like, oh, I could do this. I could do a mashup, like have that, moment where kids start to think and have those ideas for themselves, like, hey, maybe I don't want marinara. Maybe I want, some cheese sauce, whatever it is.
For sure.
Actually, that sounds pretty good. But so I think that's cool. So are you going to do another one? Because I know it's not that it is time consuming to get this correct,
Yeah, you're 100% right. And the resources and the help that I know I needed. You made reference to Laura and her illustrations, but this book doesn't get done without Jonathan Sunday, who was the editor on it. His
Awesome.
expertise, as I was writing it, I could close my eyes and I can envision what I wanted it to look like. But at the same time, the words needed to be able to carry the story. And that was something that Jonathan really helped teach me when we were writing this book. So you want that language to be strong enough that if it didn't have illustrations, you could still capture some of that attention. But this is absolutely something that I love to do. If you would have told me 10 years ago I would be writing a children's book, Lisa, I would have said you were crazy. Like, what are you talking about? I don't know if I can actually do something like that. But this gets back to something that we talked about early on, the void in children's literature when it comes to diverse characters. And I've done a lot of research on this over the last few months and really the last couple of years on the inability for the publishing world to really catch up to what society is made up of. I mean, you are more likely to see a book that has an inanimate object or an animal than you are to see a diverse character. And that's criminal to me. And I think for some might say, well, what's the big deal? If you go through psychology reports, and I think people underestimate the amounts of information being absorbed by young children. And the American Association of Psychology listed this report, and I must have read the line about 500 times. I couldn't get over it. But the line was, at the age of 3, children in the United States associate white characters with money and basically elevated status. And I couldn't believe that at age 3, that was something that was happening. So to me, that's crazy. There's a real need to try to tell more stories and have people see themselves in stories. My career, as I made reference to, I didn't know that it was an option for me to be a sportscaster. I didn't think about it. It really wasn't at least until I got to college. It was the first time I had cable in my life. We didn't have cable when I was growing up as a kid, and I'm watching ESPN and Michael Kim is on TV. And I like paused for a second. I was like, damn, like there's an Asian dude doing sports. I'd never seen that before. And I think that planted a seed for me. And then fast forward, about 10 years. And then Michael and I got to do shows together at ESPN, and I get to still call him a friend. And, those are the types of things. And I know there's that old adage, you need to see it to believe it. And to me, it sounds cheesy and corny and no one wants to hear it. We all roll our eyes, but it's true. It's reality. So when you ask, hey, is there, other stories? I got a couple manuscripts. I'm really excited. I think I'm kind of close on something that's taken some of my own personal experiences in life and placing it in a story. And I think this is me going on a little bit of a tangent here, Lisa, and I apologize, but there's something that's really frustrating even when we find stories with diverse characters. A lot of the verticals in those stories center around similar themes. And what I mean by that is it's stories about immigration, for example, or just icons in a particular genre from a particular culture, I should say, or it's someone based on their appearance. And while I think those stories are important, I do think they're limiting. So for me, with these next projects that I'm working on, I don't want those types of stories. Like I want to expand how we're telling stories about different characters from various backgrounds.
I love this. One thing I think it really does is, one of the top hobbies we have in this country and around the world is researching our family history. It's a huge thing.
Sure.
And so I think this sparks some excitement for kids to celebrate their family history and go, oh, well, this is what the food we had, in Italy. Oh, this is what we had in China. I love that you went back to the actual countries of the grandmas of what they and showed that in a very subtle way that, hey, yeah, now they're here in this country. Maybe they're not, but yeah, here they are here, right? Because we're just, I mean, they could be anywhere actually, but they're showing like, hey, this is where I'm from. And then it may spark interest in the kids to have those conversations with their elders. And that's really exciting for the elders, but to also get to understand their roots, their actual cultural heritage, instead of what is TV telling us to do? No
No doubt.
offense, since you're in TV, but you know what I
No,
mean?
you're
The
right. Yeah.
commercialism of
Yeah.
things, where it's just like everyone is this and that's that, and we need to all dress this way. Well, what about our roots and then developing who we are individually and also honoring our roots from the past, you know?
No,
So I
yeah.
think that's something really big with what you're doing, and you do it in a very subtle way and let people take it themselves. So I don't think it's just for 4 year olds, is my point too. I think this is a really good tool for families to utilize.
Yeah. And once again, and I appreciate those kind words, because I think to me, it's sort of humbling to hear your opinion on that, because I think when I started this project, I was hoping that the conversations would continue, which is why that back page is about those funky food combinations. And you don't need to be Chinese or Italian to
Mhm.
have your own food combinations. And I'm hoping that parents, will express some of those thoughts to their kids. I, I just think there's so much value in furthering some of those conversations. And I understand that, look, you and I are adults, right? Like, we can probably
Mhm.
speak a little bit differently on the topics of diversity than a 4 or 5 or 6 year old. But I think
Sure.
the introduction of some of those topics, and not in a polarizing fashion, just, hey,
Yeah.
to your child, hey, this is your ethnicity. This is where mom is from or grandma's from, or this is where dad's
And it
from and where
makes it
his family's from.
cool. You
Yeah.
you've made it cool, like something fun and exciting versus, oh, you're this, you're that. And my mom says this, or no, it's made it more of a cool thing and bridging the gaps that are there. I mean, we do have a problem in this country of people not understanding different cultures and
Yeah.
belittling as well. So we do have that issue. And so I think this is a way of going, hey, you know what? Some cultures have united. So let's have a look at this,
Yeah.
whether you like it or not, but without telling and preaching and pointing a finger, it's
No doubt.
allowing kids to just have fun and celebrate each other and be curious. I think the food and what else can you do kind of thing at the back where, what are your funky food finds, like, your mashups that gets kids together like, hey, you're this, you're that, let's mix them,
Oh,
um,
yeah.
the curiosity is a good thing and it's positive.
Yeah, I think it's a really good word to use when you say curiosity around not only their own personal experiences
Hmm.
and their family background, but their friends as well. I think we're oftentimes too very quick to put labels on everything. And I'll give
Hmm.
you an example. For me, I'm Chinese and Italian, and I've now over the last few months made a conscious decision to stop saying I'm half Chinese and half Italian, because when I was a kid
Yeah.
and I was around with my family, they never made me feel like I was half of anything. When I was with my Chinese family, like, oh, yeah, Mike's Chinese. If I was with my Italian family, Mike's Italian. And it wasn't until I started
Hmm.
going to school and being around friends when they would ask, and then all of a sudden it became, oh, you're half this and half that. And as I've gotten older, if I'm being totally candid, there's been some frustration where sometimes someone will say, well, you're not really Chinese, or you're not really Italian, you're half a Chinese, you're half Italian. And it it sort of started to bother me a little bit. And I think I've sort of netted out at a point where if I take math out of it, I say to myself, well, no, I'm Chinese and I'm Italian. So that's why I say I don't use the half anymore, because I don't think there's a reason to kind of go down that path. You can legitimately be both, and I think there's so many families
Hmm.
that are out there that probably are having that same thought process, and maybe their children as they get older. Like, I don't think they need to say that they're half of anything. They're
Yeah.
100% Chinese, and they're 100% Italian.
You could be Chitalian.
Yeah.
You could
Oh, I
create your
like that. I
own.
haven't heard that one.
Yeah, you could be Chitalian. That sounds
I
like a good
like that.
coffee. Like that sounds like a drink. That
Yeah,
sounds
no.
good.
And
That
it's a
that sounds
mixed blended
delicious.
one. It's
Yeah, see,
with
we are the
it's an
blend here.
icy one.
See, we're
Yes.
we're the
Yes.
big blends. We like to blend everything, and it's unity. And I don't know, that's a way of just coming up with your own mashup. So I mean, we could do that with the names of
Yeah.
cultures, right? Why not?
Blended coffee. I feel like there's a little cappuccino in there. Maybe we'll throw a little boba into the
Oh, yeah,
mix as
yeah,
well.
yeah.
So we're
Ooh,
here. I like
we got to
this.
have some spice in there. Yeah, I think some spice,
A little
something hot.
splash of cinnamon, maybe. I don't
Hmm.
know.
Hmm.
The
I'm in.
little bite.
Yeah.
Okay, we're there. Well, I'm
Okay, well,
starting to get
this is
hungry. All this
very,
food and drink
I
talk.
know, I know. I'm like, this is fun. I'm kind of digging this, but I agree with you. Like, in my family's heritage, we got all kinds of crazy stuff going on in ours, but there's the family story of us being part Native American and it's Paiute, And one whole side of the family is like, that did not happen. And I'm going, dude, that's so cool. So now it's like, and then it's like, oh, well, if you are, it's only 1/16%. And I'm like,
Yeah.
all right, so like really, I just actually want to know who was who. Like I want to, but
Sure.
that there's that older generation that no, you did not, our family did not mix over there. And I'm like, oh, I think we did. There's certain things. And I remember going through, we've gone through regions where the Paiutes live and going through, and there's
Wow.
this one book I have, and it's a Paiute warrior. And I swear to God, I'm a splitting image, other than blonde hair, a splitting image of this man. And that's kind of
Wow.
freaky. And I'm going, you can't tell me, these lines and everything we have, they're very much from that. And yet one whole side of the family is like, that did not happen.
That is wild
So,
to me. You got to do a little podcast on something like this,
but,
just with the
it
split
is,
images.
yeah, it's such a weird thing how people don't want to accept part of their roots. And then I
Sure.
think we're getting better. I think we are getting better depending on how you're raised. I mean, you're not raised, to be racist. I mean, you're not born racist, but you're raised
Sure.
that way, and we do have that. And I think especially in regards to our Asian community, that we've been really bad the last few
Yeah.
years, especially.
Yeah.
So I think having a book out there, I'm just gonna, I mean, it's an important thing for kids because they hear stuff. I mean, 3, 4 years old, you don't tell me they don't understand and hear what's going on in the world, right? And
Yeah.
so now to have something that, celebrates who they are, just taking it that I have to go that extra step on it because it's true is really, really, really important. So
Yeah. And
I'm glad you're doing more.
no, I appreciate it, Lisa, and think even the idea of being able to embrace and seeing yourself in a particular role, like I think there's an empowerment aspect of this, right?
Mhm.
Like if you are consistently seeing stories as a child, and I'm not saying diverse stories or excuse me, diverse children or white children. I think just any child in general, if you are consistently showing them images and giving them narratives of positive messaging when the characters look one way, to me, that's like a subtle hint that maybe they're better. And I think there's that
Mhm.
impressionable factor that's there, which is why for me, having a variety of different stories is really valuable because all children then would be able to see themselves and there'll be some curiosity. And guess what? Like I don't need to look like this
Mhm.
to be good, for example. So it's about some of that positivity that's there. I just don't see a downside in having diverse stories. I can't be,
No.
and I don't want to make these like bold, outrageous claims, but I don't like the data and the research indicates one thing. And the reality is
Mm.
that the publishing companies that are out there, the big five, they can talk about wanting diversity. They can talk about, pushing some of these books. But while there's been a slow curve and a slow line towards having more diversity, the studies that are out there will tell you like that there's just not nearly enough inventory.
Well, I think it's even the same in movies and
No
film
doubt.
and all of that. I mean, it's just this marginal side, and I think that all the muckety mucks honestly go, oh yeah, we know this, we do focus groups, but they're so busy doing meetings that they never actually do what they need to do. So it takes 10 years because they're so tied up in that kind
Yeah.
of meeting land. That's why I like being entrepreneurs. We have an idea. All right, let's get going. You know what I mean? And I
Yeah.
think that's why some of the smaller publishing houses
Yep.
are you're seeing them take the strength. Look at the vinyl industry, right? The vinyl industry tanks. All of this happens, but where the big guys aren't doing it. Where's Columbia Records doing vinyl? Where are the big
Sure.
guys? And if they came in, vinyl would be more accessible. It would be more cost effective for the consumer and for the musicians. But right now, it's the independents who are standing up and having to create vinyl and making and have a comeback. But the
Yeah.
big music
Slow to
publishers,
move. Yeah.
yeah, it's the meetings. I'm telling you, it's the
Yeah.
meetings. I think people need to stop with these long meetings that are unproductive. I have a thing about it. It's become my new soapbox is just get on with it. Just get on with it.
Just do
Put
it.
your feet in
Yeah.
the water and jump in because if the independents can do it, the big guys can. I really
Yeah.
believe that. So
No, and from a
again,
resource standpoint, to be able to execute on some of these things, the speed, like I was on a call
the
the other day.
animation that you have, that animation, and that people can access it for free on YouTube, I think is a massive deal, because animation takes so much time, getting the voice
Yeah.
acting, the colors, the movement. That really, that's huge.
Yeah, but think about it from that perspective, right? The animation process took from start to finish. If I said writing the book till it launched on Voox's platform as a video, let's just spitball here and say it was 6 months. And Voox's team has got over 300 titles at this point that they've animated. Not a huge company, we're not talking about a big five publishing house. This is a company that really specializes in the animation side. So 6 months to do this story that's right, track, add the music, the voiceovers, the narration, the whole thing. If I was about to go with the project that I'm working on next, I've been told it could be anywhere from a year to 2 years for it to launch in print. Laura had finished her illustrations probably within a month and a half. So if you're telling me, and the story was written, so the speed at which you can create these books for various communities, in my mind, the reality is much faster than the publishing companies want to execute on. So I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. The speed at which the big boys want to play it's like molasses and super slow. And then the younger companies that are more nimble and willing to make some of those decisions. I don't need to tell you, right? Like you have all these different verticals on business and culture and things that are happening in society. On the business side, the smaller businesses are the ones who really can innovate pretty quickly.
Yeah, and we're the ones taking the bigger risks.
Yeah,
It
no doubt.
is. Yeah, but that's what we love, the underdogs, don't we? For that reason, the
Yeah.
muckety mucks at the top, just get on your famous little airplanes and fly around, and just, I don't understand. It's the book world and the music world are hand in hand. The writing, the creative world is just we've got to support the independence like what
Yeah.
you're doing. I really believe in that it's crucial, because that's where we get diversity for just education, the diverse education that is needed, not just the same mainstream thing that you hear on the radio every day.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing in books. It's almost become formulaic what is happening in the publishing world. It's like, you need to follow this formula XYZ, and that's how it needs to be. And
Yeah.
that way we have sponsors, and you can do this. They're following a formula, and eventually that will run dry. And that's what I don't understand about, how long you're going to be in meetings when that well is going to eventually run dry.
Yeah.
That's kind of,
Yeah.
anyway. Yeah.
No, I'm with you.
We
I'm with you.
we went on
Preaching
that
to the
soapbox,
choir.
didn't
No.
we? Yeah, we did. But listen, I want everyone to go get it. Fried rice and marinara. It's out now. And we've got a link to the books, the animation, in the show notes. And you can also keep up with Mike on Instagram, right? Instagram
Yes.
and
Yes. And
Twitter,
Instagram
X.
and
Is it
Twitter,
X?
X.
Twitter?
I'm not cool enough. I haven't made the full transition, but that other social media platform that's now called X, that was called Twitter, it's the same handle for both that medium and also Instagram at Mike_Yam. The video is available, like you said, on YouTube and on Voox's platform. And the book itself is on Amazon and BarnesandNoble.com. Honestly, the whole process has been crazy to me, and I can't believe I'm doing an interview with you and we're talking about an actual physical book that people can get. But I really do hope that the story resonates with a lot of families, and it sparks some good conversations at home.
Well, I'm going to go cook now because I'm hungry.
Yes.
And I'm thirsty. Thank you so much, Mike. It's been a real pleasure, and best wishes on your next
I
venture with the
appreciate you.
next book too.
I appreciate you. I can't wait to be back on with you to talk about that one too.
Absolutely. You better stay in touch.
Yeah.